number 58. And it says here, how many chloride ions are contained in 55.5 grams calcium chloride, CaCl2? Now, okay, when we're looking at a question like this, all right, we're dealing with math. We have to understand what the question is asking. So here it says how many, and we're looking at chloride ions. Okay, what's our given here? Our given is 55 grams of calcium chloride. Okay, however, okay, notice here it says how many chloride ions. So we're only looking at Cl2, not the whole compound. Okay, we're only going to focus on the chloride ion. Remember, your chloride ion is an anion. It's negative. So we're looking at Cl2. Okay, with that in mind, now we have to do some conversions. Okay, so, okay, let's look here. Okay, and we're looking at number 58. Okay, so I'm going to write down what's given. So it's important when you're working on a problem like this, use your scratch paper and write everything down so you can see what you're working with, right? So we have 55.5 grams of calcium chloride, okay? And what are we asking for? Okay, it's our chloride ions. How many? Now, in order to do this question, we have to convert from grams, which is our mass that's given, to our moles, and then you have another step here, and because it's asking about how many chloride ions, we're looking at particles. Okay, so which means, you know, we're talking about atoms, molecules but in this case we're talking about the chloride ion over here. So these are your small particles. So we have to convert here to particles. So let's break it down step by step. Okay, so it's this is what we're going to be looking for. So now we're going to convert here. We always start with our given. We're going to convert from grams to moles. So we're starting with 55 grams of calcium chloride, and then we have to convert it to moles. Now remember the previous question here, when we were looking for the molar mass, okay, we have to change our mass into moles, and this is where we look at your molar mass. Okay, so which means that we have to find out the molar mass of calcium chloride. So just like what we did earlier, okay, let's break it down. I'm going to write it over here to the side. Let's get down the molar mass of calcium chloride. So again, let's look at your periodic table. There's calcium. 1 mole is 40.078 grams. So I'm going to write it down here. Okay, and now we have chlorine, which is 35.453 grams. Now we're going to multiply it by the number of atoms. We know that there's only 1 atom of calcium here, but there's 2 atoms of chlorine, so we're going to multiply it by 2. Okay, so that comes out to 40.078. Okay, now this is going to turn out to, okay, let me get a calculator here. And, okay, take out your calculators too, folks. Okay, so here, that's 35.453 453 times 2. Okay, there we go. That's 70.906. Okay, we add them up. So plus 40.078. That gives us 110.984. So the molar mass of calcium chloride is 110.984 grams, and this is what we write down here. And I put 1 mole. So remember, when we're expressing the molar mass here, we always write down 1 mole. So whenever you're doing these mole calculations, all right, it's always 1 mole is going to be equal to X number of grams, whatever your substance is. Now, since we're talking about calcium chloride, specifically for that compound, that's 110.984 grams. Now, this is where we cancel our units. Okay, remember, we've been talking about canceling units. Okay, whatever unit you have here that's given, you put it down here at the bottom. It becomes the denominator. So you cancel that out. So when you're doing the math now, it's 55.5 times 1 divided by 110.984. Okay, so let's do it here. So that's 55.5 divided by 110.984. Okay, there we go. That's 0.5. And you see like a lot of zeros here, so let's stick with 0.5 moles. We got, that's our unit that's left. Okay, so now we've converted from our grams to moles. So that's, we've determined now that this is equivalent to half a mole of calcium chloride. So now we've got the moles. Now we're going to convert to particles. Okay, so I'm going to write it down here. Okay, so we have half a mole of calcium chloride. Now going back to the question, remember it was asking for ions. And so we're going to focus on the chloride ion here. And if you look at chlorine, how many atoms do we have of chlorine? That's 2. So we're going to multiply the number of moles by 2. Okay, so that gives us our ions. I'm going to write that here. Okay, that refers now to our particles, okay? And then this is where we use Avogadro's number. Now remember Avogadro's number, okay, in case you forget, okay, but by this time you should have memorized it. It's always here on your sheet. Okay, remember your star reference chemistry materials? There you go. Constants and conversions. That's never going to change. There it is. It's 6.02 times 10 to the 23 particles per mole. So remember, particles here, in this case, for this question, we're referring to ions. Okay? So now we want to get rid of moles. Now remember, what I was telling you is whatever unit you have here, you put it at the bottom. So in this case, 1 mole refers to, okay, our chloride ions, right? And we have Avogadro's number, which is 6.02 times 10 to the 23 ions of chlorine. Okay, so now this is pretty easy. Okay, we cancel our moles. There we're left with our ions unit. Okay, now we don't need a calculator for this now. 2 times 0.5, that's equivalent to 1, right? So that's 1 mole of our chloride ion times Avogadro's number divided by 1. So a whole number divided by 1 is that number. So that's 6.02 times 10 to the 23 ions. So when we're looking, going back to our problem, which is number 58, okay, there it is. Our answer is B. Okay, so we've determined now that there are 6.02 times 10 to the 23 chloride ions in 55.5 grams of calcium chloride. Okay, so remember, in this case, this is where we've converted to particles, right? This step here. So we've moved from grams to moles to particles. Okay, so remember, whenever you got to read the question carefully, here we were only looking at the number of chloride ions.